Right, let's get some reaction to the story. We'll be speaking now to the Progressive Health Forum's Dr. Aslam Dasoo. Very good morning to you. Thank you so much for your time, Dr. Dasoo. What did you make of the ruling by the Constitutional Court?
Good morning. Thank you for inviting me. Look, I think the Constitutional Court probably acted within its remit. And of course, one understands that the Constitutional Court can only act in terms of the Constitution and the associated jurisprudence. But I've read the order, and I've got to say that the entire situation fills me with a great deal of dread. I'm not sure why the Constitutional Court was was first approached by the IEC, given that the Constitutional Court cannot amend the Constitution, and that's what this would mean in effect. Justice Moseneke, in his findings, found that there was compelling reason to postpone the elections. I don't think he indicated that they needed to go to the Constitutional Court. One would think that the only body that's capable of amending the Constitution, even temporarily, for this instance, would be Parliament. And what we now have is a situation where, and it's really surprising to hear so many politicians and lawyers all very happy that the Constitution has been upheld and so on. But and saying that, if we have the elections in October or in February, the pandemic is entirely unpredictable. This is a dangerous misconception. The issue is not how many infections we will have and how much transmission there will be in October versus February. The issue is how many vaccinations will be completed by October versus those completed in February. And this is the crystal clear point, that vaccination prevents severe disease and death. So if you have an X amount of vaccination by October and a whole lot more by February, you will prevent much disease and death in February than you would in October. So the question to ask, what is the tolerable levels of death that politicians and courts and all of those would find acceptable? So as from an ethical standpoint, this is, I think, actually a disaster in terms of the pandemic.
You speak about one disaster as you speak about the pandemic, but the big question is now the readiness of the IEC. Will they be able to make sure that the voter registration weekend is indeed possible with all the preparation that needs to take place?
Look, I think the IEC, from what we heard when they presented the case of their readiness, appeared to have all of its ducks in a row in terms of the voting stations and, having the non-pharmaceutical interventions in place and so on. And I'm sure that out of the 25,000 odd voting stations, most will be able to do that. But an election is more than just about the actual casting of the vote. Mm-hmm. There's going to be a lot of activity before then. That activity spells greater transmission in a pandemic. This is a very simple fact. And, the dangerous misconception that I mentioned that the politicians seem to labor under, is justified on the basis that other countries have had elections. Well, again, this is a dangerous myth. In the United States, several states with very low vaccination rates had elections. They then subsequently experienced a surge which then spread across the whole country. It was an absolute disaster. Similarly, in Europe. So that doesn't wash either. I think we've been sold a dummy here. I don't think the Constitutional Court was the right place to approach. I think Parliament should have been seized with this matter. And if you regard the value of life to be the principal ethical standard for a democracy, then you have failed as Parliament to protect life and to preserve well-being by insisting that you can hold the elections now. It's an irrational decision. It's not the Constitutional Court's problem. I make no comment about what they had to do, and I'm quite certain that the eminent jurists there acted within their remit. I think the problem here is a political one, and again, South Africa is let down by its political establishment.
We already find ourselves as a nation in a situation where there are other variants of the COVID-19 creeping up, and the research is being done to establish, what needs to be done in that space. And we're also dealing with vaccine hesitancy, which is also a major, major challenge, especially as we look towards elections. How then can we try and find some sort of solutions to ensure that we don't find ourselves dealing with a fourth wave, one that will be even beyond what we're currently experiencing?
There are no guarantees in a pandemic, and we don't have a crystal ball to be able to say exactly when a wave will emerge, whether there will be a resurgence or whether we'll be in some sort of remission. Again, the only important matter is vaccination. So if you are going to vaccinate, say, by the October date, let's just hypothetically say 100 people. And what that would mean is that the unvaccinated will suffer severe disease and hospitalization. 99% of all hospital admissions are among the unvaccinated, and a proportion of them will die. Now, if you vaccinate more people by the time you hold your election, that means less people will die. It's as simple as that. And it beggars belief that the political establishment, the legal establishment couldn't make that rational, common sense finding. So what we face right now, you mentioned variants. With low rates of vaccination, high rates of transmission, the possibility for variants to emerge is always strong. So we as a country have to accept that vaccination is all that prevents that from emerging from within our own borders. And that process is now underway. There will be many, many more people vaccinated by February or later than there would be now. So the most important thing is to find out whether Parliament can have a 75% majority to amend the Constitution, even temporarily, to postpone the elections until then. They have the power to do that. And if they can't muster 75%, then the country is in deeper trouble than we think, because it means up to a third of our parliamentarians and probably more value politics over life. Now, this is an ethical conundrum for the country. You and I both accept the value of life as being preeminent. Why can't the politicians? There will be more deaths if the election is held now. Now, I don't know what can be done to change that. I think we are in the hands of people who have messed up. Whether they can fix this problem is moot. I don't think they can. I think we're going to have this election. There's going to be lots of movement. It may even turn out to be a super spreader that spurs the fourth wave even sooner than we expect.
Well, let's then leave it there for now. The reaction of Progressive Health Forum's Dr. Aslam Dasoo saying that it is an ethical conundrum for the country should these elections indeed take place, saying that it was never really supposed to be up to the Constitutional Court to make this decision. Parliamentarians themselves should have maybe thought it out themselves without heading to the courts.